I'm Representative Brenda Barton, and I am the Legislative Chairman of the Agriculture and Water Committee. It's a real pleasure to be out here in rural Arizona. This is where I'm from. I'm from Safford, and I appreciate y'all showing up here. Today we will have Representative Darren Mitchell will chair this meeting for us. If you would like to speak, please fill out the request to speak forms. And we look forward to listening to you, listening to some of your situations, and also we're looking to hear some solutions from you. It's important as we move forward to put together an Arizona policy on water and water use. We need to hear from you, and I'm really pleased that you're here today. So I'm going to turn it over to Representative Darren Mitchell.
Good morning. We're going to start with introductions of everyone up here. So if Ms. Otondo, you'd like to start?
Thank you, Representative Mitchell. My name is Lisa Otondo. I represent Legislative District 4, which is the second largest legislative district in Arizona. It encompasses part of Yuma County, also includes part of Tucson, Avondale, Goodyear, Ajo, Buckeye, Tohono O'odham Indian Reservation, and the Cocopah Indian Reservation. I'm really pleased to be here, so thank you very much.
And again, Representative Brenda Barton. I represent Legislative District 6, which begins at the Grand Canyon, south into Flagstaff, Williams, Sedona, Camp Verde, over to Payson, which is where I live now, east on into Snowflake, Heber, Overgard. Thank you.
I'm Representative Mitchell. My District 13 runs from Wickenburg through the southwest valley of Phoenix, Litchfield Park, Goodyear, Buckeye, Avondale, a little bit of Avondale and Surprise, excuse me, and then all the way down to Yuma. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Good morning. I'm Representative Frank Pratt. I represent District 8, which is Pinal and Gila counties, and I am Vice Chair of the Water and Ag Committee and Chair of the Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee.
Hi, my name's Herb Gunther, and I had the pleasure of representing Yuma and La Paz counties in both the House and Senate for 11 years. And I served as the Director of Water Resources for 8 years, which I just retired from in 2011. And I'm glad to be back down here in Sierra Vista. I have a grandson down here, and the community continues to develop, and it gets better and better. And sometimes I wonder if it can get any better. And I don't have a solution to this problem. I don't have a solution, but I do admire the problem.
My name's Warren Tenney. I work at Metro Water District, which is in the northwest part of the metropolitan Tucson area. I had the opportunity of serving on the Water Resources Development Commission, representing the Southern Arizona Water Users Association. And I also have the privilege of serving on the board of the Central Arizona Project.
Thank you. Before we get started, what our agenda today is going to be is we're going to have a presentation that Mr. Tenney will narrate for us, and then we're going to take public testimony from all of you guys. But before that, I want to acknowledge a few people in the audience, and I see Senator Griffin in the back seat there. You're Senator from Sierra Vista. Thank you for being here. We also have our Republican Majority Leader in the House. I believe his name is David Gowan. Could you? And his forever sidekick, Mr. Representative Stevens. Great guys, and actually your delegation is one of the finest in the state, if I can take a minute just to say as a freshman. All three of these people have been really very helpful to me in teaching me the ropes and showing me where the bathrooms are and all the important stuff that goes on at the Capitol. And that can't be said about everybody, but you guys have, so I appreciate it. Also, I just want to say before we get started, the purpose of this meeting is last session we had a water bill that came through called 2338. You may have heard of it. And that bill came late to our Ag and Water Committee, and it met with pretty strict resistance from some of the agricultural community. So Representative Barton, who's chairman of that committee, held that bill. There weren't enough of us to pass it out, and so eventually the speaker put together this committee, an ad hoc committee. The four of us here are on it, and our job is to travel around this summer and get input from citizens around rural Arizona and try to address the points that were contentious in that last bill and see if we can come up with a new bill that will actually do something good that can't be done now, but will do no harm to any of the small communities and rural areas. So we're faced with a pretty daunting task that we may or may not be able to do, but we're going to try our best to do it. And one of the criticisms of the last bill was that citizens didn't have enough input. So we're holding these hearings around the state. This is our third, and we have two more in rural communities so that people can come out and give us their input. So that's why we're here. So we're going to start with a presentation which will talk about the old bill, 2338, which is dead, and some of the issues that we had with that, and then we'll take your questions. So if you'd like to start, Mr. Tenney. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to just give a little overview of what has been happening in the last 2 years in trying to develop a solution to look at some of the issues related to water. I'm going to start the presentation, and hopefully, there we go. So I want to start off talking a little bit about the Water Resources Development Commission. And that was established in 2010, and it was House Bill 2661, and it was established by the legislature. And it had a very distinct purpose. It was charged, this commission would be charged to look at what Arizona's demand for water and the supplies that were available to meet that demand for the next 25, 50, and 100 years. It was a big task to be given, and we had basically a year, well, almost 2 years to do this. But this represents something that is unique about Arizona, and that often we don't tout enough. And that is that in Arizona, we have always planned and invest in our water resources. And because of our willingness to be proactive and to plan and invest in our water resources, as a state, Arizona is one of the more proactive, progressive states when it comes to water management. And why is that important? Because water is our lifeblood, and without sound water management, you're unable to develop and grow. And so we've had, in 1980, the Groundwater Management Code. We have the Assured Water Supply Rules. We were built the Central Arizona Project. We have looked at different ways to put to use our water resources to benefit the citizens of Arizona. And that has had a ripple effect throughout the state of benefiting everyone in the state. And so the Water Resources Development Commission was part of that tradition, that we couldn't just say, oh, we've done great now, let's stop. No, we need to continue and plan and invest in our future. And so the Water Resources Development Commission was composed of 17 commission members, 9 ex officio members, and 7 advisory members. And the challenge was to have a final report in October of 2011, and that the commission would sunset in 2012. So of the 17 members of the commission, they came from all around the state of Arizona. It was a diverse group of representation that you can see here on the screen, representing various parts of the state, and pulling together those that understand and hopefully have a good insight about water. What the commission decided right off was to set up some committees. It was a daunting task to look at 25, 50, 100 years out. And so came up first with a population committee, so you knew what the projections were of how many people Arizona might have in the future. And then the committee that had a lot that had to do was to look at what is the water supply and demand. There was also an environmental committee to look at how water impacts our natural resources. And then a finance committee, because unless you have a funding source, you're not going to be able to get these projects moving or be able to really address how to deal with water supply and demand issues. And then finally, there was a legislative committee, because we knew that more than likely we'd have to pursue some legislation to be able to pursue any solutions. So in the final report that was issued in 2011, October 2011, what the basic boiled down into this one sentence is what the commission concluded was that it projected that the total statewide demand will range from a low of 8.1 million acre-feet of water in 2035 to a high of 10.6 million acre-feet in 2110. Now, it might help to put this in a little perspective. As of today, Arizona is using, this demand that Arizona is using right now is 7.1 million acre-feet. And that is for a population of 6.5 million people, 6.5 million people throughout the state. So you can see that in just a little over 20 years, what we found in the commission is we need to find another million acre-feet of water to meet the demand in 2035. So in the final report, to accomplish this goal, what the commission concluded was that it would be important that the solutions come from regions, that it not be a statewide solution, but that each region in the state be able to address their issues. As you all know, the issues with water here in this area in Sierra Vista are much different than what they are in, say, Flagstaff or in Show Low or in Phoenix. And so it was important that those solutions have be regionally based. There needs to be a funding mechanism. Water projects to get water resources and to meet water demand, and the projects involved with that cost money. And that there would need to be some type of legislation that would be needed to come up with this, whatever solution it might be. So in the final report, it was recommended that the Water Resources Development Commission be given a little more time, that we be able to go into the sunset date in 2012 to develop, evaluate, and prioritize some potential solutions for or legislative proposals. And so that is when the Water Resources Development Commission directed the Legislative Recommendations Committee to start working really hard and to come up with some type of solution that could address these issues that the commission found. And so the Legislative Recommendation Commission started meeting in late 2011. It came up with some proposals and then made a presentation to the full commission in April of 2012. And a key part of that was a matrix that projected 34 potential water supply development projects. These are, again, I emphasize potential. It wasn't a complete list. We knew there was a number of projects throughout the state, but these were the ones that we could identify, that people had started working on, and that these 34 were statewide. It was used, as I was trying to explain there, to understand the scale, magnitude, and the projected timing of the types of projects that would be considered. And it projected that the cost of the potential statewide water supply development projects that we identified over the next 50 years could exceed or would exceed $3 billion. Again, water projects don't just happen, they cost money. And so the best recommendation that the Legislative Recommendation Committee came up with, that then the Water Resources Development Commission agreed to support, was this concept of a formation of regional water augmentation authorities. And what that means is these would be voluntary organizations of existing governmental and other entities formed to assist local communities to develop future water supplies and infrastructure to meet future demand. So let me explain a little bit more about this concept of what the Regional Water Augmentation Authority might look like. First off, again to emphasize, these would be voluntary. It would be when two or more entities recognized that they could work together and form a Regional Water Augmentation Authority. At least one of these entities need to be a public agency. Others may be municipalities, private water companies, other water entities, counties, private entities, and Indian tribes. It must have a clear purpose. It's not, oh, we want water. No, it's we see that we could get water that would help us, the two or more entities, see that we could develop a water supply, and then the infrastructure that might be necessary, it needs to have a clear purpose. And that it would be formed on the adoption of resolutions by each entity. So everyone involved is saying, yes, this is what we want to participate in, and they so adopt a resolution stating that. The oversight for a Regional Water Augmentation Authority would be a board of directors, and that board of directors would comprise of representatives of its members. So let's say there's three entities, A, B, and C, and let's say they're all municipalities. So there would be a representative from each of those municipalities, from those municipalities' governing boards. And it would be a this Augmentation Authority would be a political subdivision and municipal corporation that would be subject to open meeting laws and public record statutes. So the power and duties of a Regional Water Augmentation Authority were viewed as the following: and that it would be able to plan, design, construct, own, and operate water projects. One of the things that the Commission wanted to make certain that the Regional Water Augmentation Authorities could do is to be able to have the same authorities that a municipality would be able to have on its own. But again, the whole concept was having two or more being able to work together to develop the water project. And so it was important that the Regional Water Augmentation Authority have the similar powers and duties as a single municipality would have on its own. And so that would include plan, design, construct, own, and operate water projects, lawfully acquire and sell water rights, acquire and sell water except to customers of municipal providers. So it wouldn't get involved in the day-to-day retail or delivery of water. It'd be able to treat water unless treatment conflicts with another entity's jurisdiction and the entity did not consent to treatment by the Regional Water Augmentation Authority, that vested right protections apply, and that there would be limited power of eminent domain, which I'll explain further in a moment. So the recommendation was that to authorize the Regional Water Augmentation Authority to obtain funding from revenue bonds, user fees, membership fees, WIFA, Water Infrastructure Financing Authority funds, grants, proceeds from loans or advances, capital contributions from private parties, and other sources except for ad valorem taxes and general obligation bonds. Again, trying to provide a funding mechanism for these water projects. So this was the recommendation from the Water Resources Development Commission. And so those recommendations were sent over to the Speaker of the House, and some legislation was developed. And it was pulled together and put into House Bill 2338 for this legislative session that just concluded. And as with most legislation, there were questions, and there were issues, and there were concerns. And so let me talk about a little bit of those concerns that arose once this legislation was introduced. First off, there was concern about, or an issue about, what does augmentation mean? And it's not actually defined. It wasn't actually defined in 2338. However, the intent was that a regional water augmentation authority would be able to acquire, hold, and assign water rights, and acquire and sell water. It was all about augmenting your existing water supply that those participating in the authority were wanting to do. And that all actions taken by the authority under this chapter would be in accordance with state and federal law. Need to emphasize more than once in this presentation that state and federal law are very strict about how water is sold and how it is acquired and the transfer of things. And so this authority had to follow exactly the same state and federal laws that everybody else has always followed here in Arizona. So the formation. Well, the formation is similar in ways to other water entities that were formed. It's very similar to what is in the statutes right now called the Mojave County Water Authority and the Pinal County Augmentation Authority. And those were examples of similar entities. The authority, the Regional Water Augmentation Authority, would have to give notice to the Board of Supervisors in each county in which a proposed use of water from the authority would be located of the authority's formation and file organizational documents, membership, water issues to be addressed by the authority, and proposed location and use of water, and publish a notice of the authority's formation. And then anyone, any aggrieved person may protest formation by the filing of action in Superior Court. This is very similar to what was already done in the books. Well, it might be asked, well, why didn't we just try to work with something in the statutes? Well, what was found was there were many challenges when you try to change someone else's already existing statutes, such as the Mojave County or the Pinal County Augmentation Authority. And so that's why I developed the new legislation for a Regional Water Augmentation Authority. Oversight. As explained before, the concept and what was in the legislation was that the oversight would be provided by a board of directors of the Regional Water Augmentation Authority. Municipal and county members would have elected governing bodies. Private water company rates are companies are regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission. So again, the idea was that the authority's board would be representative by elected officials that elected from Town A, Town B, Town C would each sit on that governing, on the board of directors. And so there would be a connection back to each of the members so that there would be proper oversight. The authority would be a political subdivision subject to open meeting laws and public records requirements. There was a lot of concern both at the Water Resources Development Commission and in the development of this legislation that this be transparent and that all actions taken by the authority under this chapter shall be in accordance with state and federal law. One of the concerns was a question about eminent domain. The Regional Water Augmentation Authority was proposed to have eminent domain. And you might say, well, why? Well, as a city or town also has eminent domain that is something you don't really want to have to utilize, but if you're building, say, a pipeline to move water, it becomes real critical for the overall community to be able to have that pipeline go in and not be obstructed. And so we wanted the Regional Water Augmentation Authority to have the same authority. But there was concerns about this, and so at the commission level and also in the legislation, that power of eminent domain was limited as follows. The authority shall not exercise the power of eminent domain to condemn water, water rights, wells, existing water systems, land owned by another governmental entity, or land for purposes of drilling wells or to acquire electrical facilities. It would just be for real property necessary for pipelines, infrastructure, and easement for the authority water projects. Another issue that came up was the potential conflict with existing water entities. The idea, again, was, the concept originally was that the Regional Water Augmentation Authority would be formed by 2 or more entities. And it would probably be in a region where they would, where they may be the only 2 or more entities that exist in that region. But there was the possibility that there could be someone else, another entity nearby, and the concern of how that Regional Water Authority might impact them. And so the authority would be able to acquire and sell water unless the sale of water is directly to customers of a municipal provider as defined in the statutes, and the municipal provider did not consent to the sale of water by the authority. That the authority would be able to treat water unless treatment conflicts with another entity's jurisdiction and the entity did not consent to the treatment by the authority. Another issue that came up was the parameters or boundaries of the Regional Water Augmentation Authority. It would be a little bit different in that it wasn't necessarily based on a geographic or political boundaries, but it was connected by the infrastructure. Again, the general concept was that you would have in a region in the state where 2 or more entities would want to work together, and it would be based on that project that they were building, and that by the participation of Town A, Town B, and Town C working together, that then became the authority over that project. And finally, some questions had arisen about the termination of the authority membership. The legislation did say that an authority consisting of 2 or more members could dissolve, and it outlines how that dissolution would occur. Unfortunately, it wasn't very specific about 2 or more than 2 members. The intent, I believe, was to be the same as 2 members being able to have a dissolution. It's important to recognize, again, that water projects are not cheap. And if you start working on an expensive water project, it was important in the legislation not to have where one member of the authority could pull out and not have any responsibility or financial for the finances that had already been invested. And so it does have in there for the dissolution that if you're pulling out, you still need to fulfill your financial responsibility that you had originally agreed to. And so that is the end of the presentation. But I'm hoping that that gave you a little bit of an idea or an overview of what the intention was in developing the legislation and the importance of looking back at the Water Resources Development Commission with its challenge to identify the supply, demand needs and the water supply that would be needed. The easy part was identifying that we need another 1 million acre-feet of water by 2035. The hard part is coming up with a solution that benefits and helps all of the state of Arizona, and particularly regions that really have challenges when it comes to water resources. And so, as was mentioned, look forward to I know that the legislators are anxious to hear solutions and ideas, and I can continue to state that those of us that work in water every day continue to recognize how critical it is for Arizona, and that by planning and investing in our water resources, Arizona will continue to be a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Thanks for your time and your expertise to the issue. I really appreciate it. We're going to move to the public portion of our hearing. And I just want to remind everybody, if you want to speak and you haven't filled out a slip, they're up here on the table. You just fill out the slip and leave it. If you have a written document that you'd like submitted into a record, you could leave that up there as well. But we're going to go ahead and begin. Our first speaker is Doug, and I want to apologize right now that I'm going to probably slaughter some of your names, but it's Doug Benke? That's correct. Okay, good.
My name is Doug Benke. I live locally here in Sierra Vista. I would like to talk about some of my concerns about individual rights and freedoms. Recent revelations about things like the IRS and NSA, activities here in Arizona about EPA and the Forest Service have created a sense of urgency in my mind to reinforce individual freedoms and rights wherever I can. I am grateful for today's meeting. It is an opportunity for me to express concerns as applied to the local level. My comments about the board, about the Water Authority, there needs to be in every bill, in every legislation, a paragraph that addresses how the individual rights of the voters are protected, are added to, or are diminished by this piece of legislation. It's hard to discern exactly what the impact is, but I see large government circling in on my rights at the national level. At the state and local level, I see a gradual encroachment of those rights. So some of the things I see in this bill, I don't see enough responsibility to the local citizen. In fact, I don't see anywhere in the bill where the local citizens are identified, what rights they have, how they address grievances. There is something in there about judicial issues, but the judicial issues are only addressing if the water authorities have been properly formed or not. They do not address the grievances of the citizens. The elected official from the local authority that's represented on the board of directors, what happens if that local official no longer serves as a local official, if his term expires? Is he replaced by the next person that's elected in that position? When we elect him, is he elected to be on the water authority, or is he just appointed by the city or county government to serve in that function? I want a person representing the local official to be elected to that position to serve on the water authority. I don't want them appointed by the local government. I want them appointed by the citizens. Your presentation today addressed eminent domain. I think eminent domain should not be in this bill. Eminent domain should be follow the local, state, and local procedures for eminent domain. The water authority should not be granted eminent domain, even for the rights of way. They have to apply for it. I believe that's all my comments that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Russ Clark from Yuma County, Board of Supervisor. If everybody will just state their name once they reach the podium for the record, that'd be great. Thanks.
Name is Russ Clark, Yuma County Supervisor. Chairman Mitchell, thanks for being here, and distinguished panel. You've heard from me before, but a few things I wanted to add to some of my comments earlier. A lot of talk has been about this commission that was put together to come up with HB 2338, a distinguished commission that had a lot of great ideas. Something I don't think gets mentioned enough is that the commission itself never really created HB 2338 in its final form or even approved it. And I understand it wasn't even a majority that agreed with that HB 2338. I've met a lot of nice people that were on that original commission that fight against HB 2338 and tell us all the time that it's a bad bill. Now, the fact that you're out traveling the state, I want to thank you for again, because I had a chance to take my wife on a date to Cochise County. We've had a great time coming out here, and something from talking to the people in the room is there's an agreement. And Yuma's in a different situation. And as we mentioned, the water situation is different all across the state. And Yuma's in a different situation. We have very strong water rights and are fearful of losing them through transfers. And that's what this bill will open up to, is not augmentation, which is new water, but more of a transfer of water. And of course, that concerns our economy in Yuma. In Sierra Vista, and here it's a little different, but yet I hear the same concerns about a strengthening and a growing of government, a growing of eminent domain, a setting up of new panels of non-elected officials, or mostly non-elected officials, that will make decisions for us that we don't have any control of, much like we had in the redistricting committee that created more controversy than it solved problems. And we see this going down the same road that is possibly going to cause problems, and then who do we react to? The elected. They're not elected to these positions, and we see it as a problem. Our answers in the future, we understand them. I think everyone understands them, that we are going to be in a water shortage. New water needs to be found. Transferring water around the state from existing water is not really our long-term solution. I don't see a lot in HB 2338 about reaching out for new water. It's more of shifting the water that we've got in transfers from those that are already using it. We need to do more, like we even saw in Flagstaff, about relooking at our forest and the consumption that our forest has, maybe in overgrown situations, or building new dikes or new dams, and worried about evaporation and the things that aren't in this bill, the things that we should be looking for in the future. Shifting water around this state will not solve its problems in the future. New water will. So the word augmentation in this bill doesn't really mean new water. It means transfer. And that's something we can't agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Tricia Gerardette, if you'd like to speak. Did I misspell it? Mispronounce it, I mean?
No, you got it quite right.
Okay.
My name's Tricia Gerardette, and I live here in Sierra Vista. Like Mr. Gunther, I admire the issue. It's a tough one. I do have some questions, and I don't fully understand if the panel or anybody is likely to answer, at least if they seem simple, or if you're just going to take everything under advisement. So I'll start asking, and
What our purpose is to really hear from you and what your concerns are.
okay.
We're still formulating our ideas through the year, so we haven't been answering questions. We've just been taking input from you.
Thank you. Some of my questions, I think, were clarified by Mr. Tenney's presentation, but I think I then got a sense that the proposal of a regional authority would or could cross basins, watersheds, counties. That was my sense of your presentation. That was one of my questions from the way HB 2338 was set up. It wasn't it certainly wasn't laid out clearly that it would be or that it wouldn't be. So that was a question. I was a little intrigued or concerned about one of the possible members in terms of the formation, in which it says any private entity. And my interpretation of that would be that it would presumably be like a corporation or an LLC, but I don't know if there's a definition of what a private entity is. Am I a private entity? I assume not, but I don't know. Then, again, I was operating off of 2338. I don't know where things might be changed. In the formation section, the authority was to be formed on adoption of resolutions, and everybody, then approves their membership. It wasn't clear, wasn't specific that I saw that each proposed member who is adopting a resolution needed to have the exact same wording, let's say, in their resolution, or certainly very, very similar. I think one might assume they would, but that I didn't see that in the bill language. So that would be an interest. Along with the proposed members in the formation of this, I think it appeared to me that there could be as little as one public agency and then a variety of other entities, water companies and whatever a private entity might be. And in terms of citizen input to the process, yes, once the authority is formed, then people get to speak to the board itself. But in terms of sort of power over the board members, as was mentioned earlier, if only one or maybe two members of this entity are actual elected officials, I found that pretty worrisome, that citizen control isn't the right word, but influence perhaps or connection could be less than many people would like, probably. And my last question, I think, is that, again, in the very first sentence of the formation paragraph, it says that two or more may form a regional water augmentation authority that has a clear public purpose. My clear public purpose might not be the same as yours, and I wondered, again, if there are any parameters. Is there any definition of what a clear public purpose is? Does it come under sort of the general health and welfare phrasing that you hear a lot? In this particular area, would a clear public purpose be protecting the riparian area? Would a clear public purpose be supporting the building of 7,000 new homes? So who gets to define a clear public purpose? That seemed pretty important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. And regarding 2338, which is our old bill, which I know we're discussing because we need to look at where we came from to know where we're going. But if Warren, if you want to hit on a couple of those that you were involved with, if you feel that you can quickly address a couple of her issues, that'd be great.
Well, I was just going to add, I think questions often are a great way to get us to look at how to make improvements and such. Just real quickly, I can respond. During the discussion of the regional water augmentation, before it became legislation, but during the discussions at the Water Resources Development Commission, the idea of a private entity, of allowing them to join, the idea was, I'll just use an example, which sometimes is dangerous to use an exact example, but in the Green Valley area, you have a need to have more water there, and then you have Freeport-McMoRan with its mine, that if it was able to utilize more renewable supply, it would then help the whole overall groundwater situation in that whole area. The idea was that a private entity such as Freeport-McMoRan brings money to the table and might help reduce the amount of cost to the overall project. And so that was one of the reasons of wanting to include private entities. So,
Great, thank you. Jerry Armstrong, you next.
Hello, my name is Jerry Armstrong. I got a little ranchito down there in Palominas, about 20 acres, and I have my own well. And I've got several concerns about these type of things. The last time that we had this water board come up for election, I voted against it. And I'll tell you why. You're hard to trust. You know, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I see things like, as an example, eminent domain. I don't want somebody running a pipeline across my property against my will. I mean, if they want to, you know, if somebody wants to sell them that easement or whatever, that's a different story. But it gives, you know, it goes against my grain. A water board. Another thing, I mean, here in Sierra Vista, this is a water roller coaster. I mean, you know, you guys are the next lawsuit waiting to happen. BLM has joined a lawsuit suing for tribute, the Stop Block Tribute, Castle and Cook project. God only knows who they're going to sue next. You know, I mean, the well owners in this area that I've talked with, you know, we have a genuine concern that we're probably going to be sued as time goes on. Special interest, they like to blame the well owners for pumping their wells that are destroying the river, according to them. When indeed, you know, the river's controlled by Mexico. You know, there's E. coli in the river. They say as well it's because the cows, you know, poop on the ground and the ground washes into the river. And I don't believe that. I wonder why something isn't being worked out with Mexico on the San Pedro River here. And then we have another concern is recharge stations. I sent an email to the county commissioners here, and I said, well, you know, what are we doing about the recharge stations? What are we doing to make sure that we're not polluting the aquifer? You know, and I got a letter back that says, you know what, you just need to do your own research on that. I think if when you talk about water, you're going to talk about recharge. If you're going to add something into a bill, then recharge stations, I'm all for them. But they need to be monitored, and it needs to be clear that we're not going to pollute our own aquifer. Wholesaling of water. This is one of the biggest reasons I didn't trust the last people that came in, was because it seemed clear to me that what they want to do is they want to drill a big well, establish a tax base, drill a well, and sell water elsewhere. I'm being taxed to death as it is. You know, I pay a lot in taxes, and I know that we need to do something about water, but I'm leery about paying any more taxes here. And it would really bother me if the special interest groups that are located in this area that want to shut down the wells, what if they all got elected to the board, whoosh, out the door, and you say, well, it's not in the bill now, and it's, you know, but that's this bill. What about the next one, and what about the next one? You know, what about the things that can come into being as time goes on? I just see this as too much government and too much control. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Greg Cameron?
Hi, I'm Greg Cameron. I'm a local landowner in the San Pedro Valley, out in the dust. I've got 26.
Talk into the microphone so we can hear you. Thank you.
I've got 26. Is that okay?
That's fine.
I've got 26 young trees behind my little piece of paradise. Started planting them about 7 years ago and been planting them since. Blackberries as well. They're doing great. If I did not pump my well daily, there'd be dust, there'd be fruit jerky been following this water situation since before I came to Arizona. I was following it from Alberta. And I came here because of the climate and the freedom that was evident in building codes that encouraged using alternate construction techniques, recycled materials. It's pretty good to be here. I don't like hearing eminent domain. I don't like the sound of that. Entities, private entities. Sometime back, 16 sections of good land with good water underneath it were targeted by a private entity, by a corporation. And some local people got together, worked night and day, printed tons of material to submit to the Alberta or the Arizona Corporate Commission and defeat what was essentially a land grab, a water grab. A foreign company, Freeport McMoran. Who is Freeport McMoran? They're a private entity. They're a foreign company. How do you hold them accountable? In the section where we're discussing, well, they pull out and we're stuck holding a bag. Well, how are you going to hold an international mining consortium or a Canadian water company accountable? You know, take it to the United Nations? They're very effective.
Thank you, sir.
And everything that Mr. Ross said, what he said, I'm all aboard with that too.
All right, next is Colonel, let's see, Fenstermacher. Did I come close?
Yeah, pretty close.
All right.
My name is Gene Fenstermacher. I'm in the Sierra Vista Environmental Affairs Commission. I have several things. I had some questions primarily, but I'll see if I can reword them. I would be interested in knowing, there was some discussion about what that the commission that has been in existence since 2010 has been coming up with some resources to fund some different projects. It would be interesting to know, if you have it at your fingertips, to date, what kind of projects have you funded? How much have they cost? And how many acre-feet of water, as an example, were achieved through these processes? HB 2338, I heard somebody say that it's dead. Does that mean it's not going to be resurrected next year? Or does it sound to me like maybe it is going to be resurrected, but maybe you're going to address some of the things that Mr. Tenney addressed here, some of the problems with it. I'm also a little bit curious with this commission, or with this, the 5 people who were on the list that were going to be here today. Only 2 of those people were sponsors of that bill. I just wonder why. Only 2 people were sponsors of HB 2338. If this is such an urgent, Mr. Tobin and the young lady over here were the only sponsors of the bill. I would urge maybe some of our other legislators to get involved in whatever we're going to do with that bill next year and become involved and be sponsors of it, so we have some sense of how much support this thing does have. I suggest also that any future efforts that you concentrate on managing our own natural resources as opposed to transferring resources from one region to another. We all know that Maricopa County, we all know that Tucson has a severe water shortage, or at least we are told this. I wonder what you think about the Sierra Vista subwatershed. Do we have a water shortage down here in your view? We have hydrologists who say we got enough water in the aquifer down here to satisfy the current population for 2,600 years. So do you believe that or not? I don't know. But would that be that you're looking for us to transfer water out of here to Tucson? Is that part of what your agenda is? We'd like to know that someplace along the line. We here in the Sierra Vista subwatershed have been concentrating on, over many years now, since 2004 at least, of trying to eliminate our annual deficit. Our annual deficit was 5,100 acre feet in 2011. We have a plan down here now where we can eliminate that deficit by 2014 if everybody would get on board and support the things that could be done to do that. And if there's anybody that's interested in how to do that, I can give you a 9-page paper to tell you how to do that.
Yep, do
I
it.
would urge, and a lot of that has to do with detention basins. I talked briefly about managing our own natural resource as a means of, if you want to call it augmentation or replenishing the aquifer. It's not really augmentation, I don't think. It's enhanced infiltration to the aquifer using our own natural resources. I would encourage the commission, if it is formed, or this committee, to concentrate on making sure that this commission takes a look at funding these kinds of projects, funding the construction of detention basins. We have a study that was conducted in 2006 at the expense of the county, the city, and the fort, and the Upper San Pedro Partnership that identified 40 detention basin locations within the Sierra Vista subwatershed, capable of producing annually nearly 3,000 acre feet of water. Only 13 of these have been built since 1985. A lot of it has to do with funding. So I would suggest that you concentrate on listening to the cities on detention basins and consider funding. And I'd be curious to know as to whether or not that has even been looked at as far as funding is concerned. That's why I was started off with originally, I would like to know what kind of projects you have funded so far. See if there were any detention basins in there. Are you always looking only at exporting and importing water from one region to another? That's all I have, unless somebody has some questions, some responses to.
No, thank you, sir, but I would like your report, if you could give us that report, the 9-page report that you spoke of.
Okay.
And also, I just wanted to, for clarification, this committee, this ad hoc committee was formed after 2338 was killed, and the people on this committee were all responsible for that. We didn't support that bill. So we're not here to dredge it up and put some lipstick on it and resubmit it next year. We're here to actually come up with something that can be a consensus bill that will actually do something good, if we can. So that's what we're looking at. And it includes not just, I know the word augmentation has been a big word, of meaning transferring, as Mr. Clark said, transferring water rights or water from one section of the state to the other. But we're looking at everything from A to Z, and that's conservation. We toured a ranch this week of where they showed us how water is now beginning to seep out of the ground because they've eliminated a lot of their growth, their tree growth. So we're looking at all types of things. It's not just transferring water from one willing seller to a willing buyer somewhere else in the state. So I don't want you to feel like we're here for a water grab. We're actually here to listen to people's concerns and try to come up with a bill that can get us through the interim period before we can come up with a long-term water resource augmentation policy 25 years and further down the road. So, but I appreciate it.
Well, whatever we come up with, I hope it's not as long as the one we had. It had 9 pages of new data out of 15 pages in this bill, and gentleman here talked about some of the problems with some of those things, and some of the people here have mentioned some of the problems, eminent domain, et cetera, et cetera. A
Mr.
15-page document is something else.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Yes,
to,
yes.
to you, sir. I appreciated your comments, and also to the audience and concerned members of the community that came out. I would like to first point out that it was Chairman Barton who held the bill because of the approach. So I am from Yuma County. I am a farmer's daughter and a landowner in Welton Mohawk Irrigation District. My family owns 550 acres. We have water rights. It was concern for me, and so I asked Speaker Tobin if I could be a part of this to also have a voice for my community, and my community has many of the concerns that I've heard here today. My colleagues on this panel are all on the Water and Ag Committee. They, as I mentioned, Representative Barton held the bill because of the concerns that came out. So we're really here to look for solutions, and it is the reason when we got together that we decided to hit the road so that we could look at Arizona seriously and find not just one answer. There isn't just one answer, but a culmination of responses. I appreciate what Representative Mitchell said because he spoke for all of us. So thank you for your words, but I can honestly tell you that those are our concerns as well. So thank you very much.
Okay. I might mention one other thing. It was commented here about 7,000 new homes in this area. Well, that 7,000 new homes in this area is a project called Tribute. And that's it's a project of well-managed growth over the next X number of years based on demand. And I have some documentation that I can show you also that says that that is potentially a net zero water use function project, particularly if you look at detention basins. We are blessed in this area with a lot of streams that come from the mountains down to the river. If we manage that water, we can fix our problems. And if there are other locations throughout the state like that that have streams, not rivers, but washes feeding into the rivers, you need to look at detention basins. I've had a hard time convincing the Upper San Pedro Partnership to concentrate on this, but with the lack of availability of CAP water, the cost of CAP water, et cetera, importing it into this area, this area and other areas need to look at managing their own natural resources to fix their problems.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Smiley, Mo Smiley.
My name is Mo Sinsley. I'm from Tombstone, Arizona. I think everybody knows that we're fighting for our water. I have here with me a document that shows where our water in the Huachucas up there, the springs, and the pipeline that was put in the 1880s. Those springs up there that they have had two things on them. Anytime you went below the surface of the thing, you had to have a patent claim. We got patent claims on this. The other thing you have to have is a deed for the property. We have the property. Now we fight with the Forest Department to get back into our property after their failure to control the ground growth underneath the trees they have that caused the fire. Now that fire was 33,000 acres. That happens in several other states too where they've had a lot of problems. Rio Dosa, New Mexico was 44,000. Colorado Springs, where I have relatives up there, the problems they had, the same thing. On those pipelines we got, I'm glad that they are looking at what it is, and I'll send you guys a copy here of what I have. I think I have two of them with me. Yeah, here, I can pass this on so you can look at it. Whoops, it goes like this here. This is Carr Canyon, or Miller Canyon and Carr Canyon, where it brings the water in. Those pipelines are built in the 1880s. They were made to, it's 26 miles that brings that water into the city of Tombstone. We've been in court fights several different times. We've won with the Forest Department and rest of them. This last time out, they claim we don't have a right to get in it, but June of this last year, 8th and 9th of June, I led 235 people in the shovel brigade. We went in there to repair our pipelines. Well, one of the things was we couldn't take a wheelbarrow in there. They said a wheelbarrow was a mechanized piece of equipment, and I think I heard one of the gentlemen's ego, I should say. I said the only way that would be a mechanized piece of equipment if a jackass like you was pushing it through. The problem we have, and right now we have with Congressman Smith and then Congressman Flake when he was there, a hearing back in Washington, D.C., and we have the Goldwater Institute that has been doing all of the law stuff for us free, trying to get it done. But it's still a struggle for a small city like we have right now. The pipeline itself brings us in water, some of the best water in. Some people accuse us of taking the water from them in the from there to Hereford area, and there's on that particular one there, in the documentation I saw, there was 8,000 some odd wells that are dragging on that part of it. That's a lot of straws on a soda, really. But one of the things that I found was in 2010, we were starting to put together, we had to put together a water district, they claimed. And we went out to different people. For 1 year, I traveled all around Cochise County on that there. We defeated that bill, but there was a second thing on that bill that you had to have 5 people on the board. It's funny how that took place. The one guy got 9,580 votes, and the other 3 got 5,580 votes of this particular area right here. I watched on by the DMV where the Charleston Road there, they were doing the road and they're using water. So I asked the guy with the tanker, I said, how many of these loads do you do a day? He says about 4 to 5. I said, how much do you carry on? 5,000 gallons. 4.5 months they used that water. So I came over here and I asked the people in sanitation, I said, where's your gray water recovery pipe at so these guys can keep the dust down? Oh, we don't have that. We're injecting it back in again. To me, I think that's wrong. And the reason why I say this, the city of Santee in San Diego area went to gray water recovery. They made it mandate any new houses that were built had to have gray water recovery on it. And it was onto a pipeline that went where it was processed and put back out. There they have their lakes that they use, all their golf courses and entrances from their freeway, the water is used. I feel that anybody that builds over 50 houses should have put aside 2 lots that do gray water recovery. They can go back on, the only pipe that comes out of your house to wash your car, wash down the driveway, or water the lawn is a gray water recovery, a purple one. I think that saves a lot. To inject it back into the ground, yeah, that probably works pretty good too. But if we got all these trucks out here where they're building homes, 7,000 homes they're going to build, I think each one of those should have at least 100 homes would have 3 lots that would do gray water recovery back right there instantly, not just pipe coming out of the ground, out of the side of the house that has been processed by the city so you could drink it. And I think that this here is one of the things we need to go after, is the gray water recovery on these things. I'm surprised at some of the other things that haven't been mentioned. I don't know how many cities around here or how many counties around here have that enforced, gray water recovery. 2 ways they can do it. The city can put theirs back in, but then also they should be able to do things like the dust that they're keeping down with it. I'll show you one photograph that I have originally of the dam we had up there. The other picture disappeared. But it shows that, and we, up there, that was up on 77 when they had the fire and our little rain we have every once in a while, dislodged boulders just like they did this last time. And it took out that thing. That was about a 1,000,000-gallon reservoir up there. The animals could go to it. So when it started flowing over, it would flow down to the other springs. And so far, we have been kept from going in with equipment to repair where we're at. We're getting at 62 to 7,200 feet is where the waters come from. Goes 26 miles to Tombstone, hits the San Pedro River down there. It's 1,250 pounds per square inch, pushing it up there. It's all gravity flow. And every once in a while, we see down there, we worry about the aquifer down there. But you know what? Those cottonwoods use an awful lot of water. They're very green right now.
Yes, they do.
And we need to do something about that. And especially some of the damage that's laying down there, the trees that fell over, that they don't go in there and take care of them. I'd like to see that taken care of, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sinsley.
You can't get any before that.
Is there anyone else that would like the opportunity to speak other than Senator Griffin? Yes, please. Can you after you speak, will you fill out a little, give us your name and.
My name is Cale Kiaba. I live here in Sierra Vista. I'm just here I missed the presentation. I thought it was later on in the day when more people could come. I'm here to just let you know that I'm against formation of any kind of a board which would decide to sell or to get water. I'm more concerned about the water being sold by the board to some entity outside of the area. Within the state, if Maricopa County or some of the other larger populated areas have problems with getting water that they need for growth, then maybe they should stop growing until they find water, not take it out of Cochise County. I carry this around with me. You probably recognize it. It's the Constitution. And it lays out how the government at federal level should be working. Well, we all know this was adopted by the people, by the states, over 200 years ago. Today we have the Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Energy, although they're part of the Treasury Department, the IRS, and all of them operate supposedly under this, but we know that they're not following it, and as a citizen, we don't have much input to it. We have to get our representatives, and getting our representatives keep control of those entities like pulling teeth. It doesn't really matter. It's not their fault that the EPA is trying to implement within the state of Arizona regulations that won't do anything for the air, but it's going to cost us millions of dollars. So I'm here just to voice my opposition to any kind of formation or a bill that would allow the formation within the counties to set up boards to decide who they can sell water to. It might be good now with all the intentions of the people that are pushing the bill, but in 200 years, we're going to end up with the EPA and IRS, Department of Energy, and other such entities that aren't controlled by the people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you would fill out a slip for us, for the record. Senator Griffin. Oh, one more.
I did fill out a slip.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Come on up. We must have misplaced it.
I set it on the table, or I think in one of those little black things.
Okay.
I'm Lucinda Irvin. I'm a self-employed equine veterinarian in Cochise County who has gotten very interested in water issues to the point where I volunteer what time I have with the Hereford Natural Resource Conservation District here that's based in Sierra Vista that affects this county and the San Pedro River. And I'm their representative to the Upper San Pedro Partnership for the same reason. This county, I just want you all to know that this area, I should say, and the county, part of the county, is extremely active in trying to preserve what we have. We don't just want to preserve the water in the watershed with the water that we get through our wells for our own purposes. We want to also preserve the river, and that's becoming harder and harder to do. We also want to preserve Fort Huachuca, which is the the economic engine that also runs this county and makes it as, I don't know, it's just a very nice, complete county down here that's well-funded, and a big reason for that is Fort Huachuca. And they've been very instrumental in also cutting down their water use, trying to, again, save the river. So it's going to sound isolationist, I suppose, but that's okay, because all politics is local, and this local politics area, this area is very, very active. Like I said, I give whatever free time I have to try to do that at my own expense with these groups. So we defeated the Cochise Water District in 2010 in the November election because we don't want a governmental agency to come in and tell us what to do with our water. The Bureau of Reclamation has had a big study on piping CAP water to Sierra Vista, to this area, and wants the Sierra Vista City Council to approve funds to do more study on that. I think most of us feel that that's wasted money and wasted time, seeing as how everything we read about says that the CAP has no extra water. We are taking care of the water we have, and we don't want it to go someplace else. So just so that you know, we're not just casual local people showing up at a meeting once in a while. We give our own individual time to trying to preserve what we have, because we do value what we have, and the San Pedro River and the watershed that's underneath us, and trying to conserve that. So we have closed agricultural wells in our area for that very reason. We used to raise quite a bit of alfalfa, and we had quite a bit of agriculture. Those wells are closed, and one of the main reasons is to not draw down from the river. So we have made sacrifices. We will continue to make sacrifices, and I don't think we need another bill from the government to tell us how to do that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Was there anyone else before Senator Griffin? Okay, yes, in the back. And if you could, after you're done, just fill out a little slip for us.
I didn't expect to speak, but I did want to make a comment. My family's been here since '68, and we have 2 wells and a pond on our property. There's a lot of water that's wasted, especially during monsoon, down Ramsey Road. And so much so that driveways are washed out. My dad can't drive into his property. And a lot of that is only because of the, I don't know, some construction that's been done. And I don't understand why we are wasting so much water. There's got to be a way to, to save it. And so that's something I would like to see, is maybe we can find a way to protect and save the water that's coming through during monsoon and off the mountains. So I just wanted to make a comment about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paul Muthart. I'm a general manager for a produce farm in Yuma County. Thank you for being here. Mr. Tenney, thank you for your report. It was very good. I'd like to loosely quote something you said, that without water, you can't have growth and development. It seems to be a driver in why we need to move water around. Without water, you can't grow. And I'd like to say that I'm not sympathetic to the idea that bigger is always better. 3 stories. The farm I work for is a family farm. It's been in business for 60 years. We can drive across the bridge and farm in California if we wanted to. We could drive 10 minutes and farm in Mexico if we wanted to be bigger. But we've decided that from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense for us to grow and expand into California, into Mexico. So rather, we do what we do really well, and we make a profit, and we manage what we have. Number 1. Number 2, we recognize the limits of nature. Our primary crop is head lettuce, November through March. As much as we'd like to, we can't grow lettuce in Yuma in June. We work within what we have. Number 3, I have a son who's a student at the U of A, and thank God he's last year. He wants a new pickup truck. I look at the checking account balance and I tell Luke, we have to live within our means. We don't have the resources to buy you a new pickup truck. So I think that's my point this morning. We need to respect nature, live within our means, live within the resources that we have. Don't buy into bigger is better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Was there someone else in the back along the wall? No? Senator Griffin, you're up. 20 seconds.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here, not only on the panel, but the audience as well. I'm Gail Griffin. I'm your state senator for this particular area, and 2 years ago, I was the chairman of the Water and Natural Resource Committee. In this session, I'm the chairman of Government and Environment Committee, which handles all the water issues that we have. And I want to thank you for your stand on 2338, because there have been a lot of voices in opposition to that particular bill, and I want to thank you for holding it, Representative Barton. What that bill did was move water around, and I'll try not to repeat what has already been said. Moving it from areas that have water to areas that don't have water within the state. It doesn't create any new wet water, and that's what we need to concentrate on. The language of the bill is very familiar, since we've heard some of the same verbiage since the early 90s, I think. Is that 90, 92, 94? And maybe even before. And like what was said, the people in this particular area voted down an initiative for water management. The bill will move water around within active management areas and non-active management areas. The population, 80% of the population is metropolitan areas, and we that live in the 20% other areas are very concerned about our water and our natural resource industries. The Department of Water Resources continues to work on solutions. They suggest, as some have already suggested, that we need to address stormwater management. We need good forest management. The Forest Service forest lands were set up for economic reasons and for water. They weren't national parks. Macro water harvesting, we had a bill that set up 2 areas as one was Prescott area as defined in the bill, and the other would have been 25 miles from a military post, which would be the San Pedro River. Not too long ago, 2 years ago, there was a bill that would have moved water from non-active management areas to other non-active management areas, or from the upper San Pedro River. The San Pedro River was actually mentioned in those bills. That bill didn't go any further either. Macro water harvesting and desalinization. Those of you that are from Yuma know that that's a great possibility, and the Department of Water Resources are working on those solutions. So what we need is new wet water instead of moving water from those that have it to those that don't have it. Water rights are property rights, and we need to be very protective of property rights. And for the record, would everybody in the audience that is opposed to this water management plan please stand? So for the record, just about everybody in the room is standing.
Yeah, 90%.
And please take that back for your record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. If there's no one else that would like to speak from the audience, how about here on the stage? Would Ms. Hatondo, you have anything to say? Or?
No, I just, first of all, I want to say thank you to the Yuma congregation that has come to every meeting and will continue to come. Agriculture is 80% of the economy in my hometown. I know as well as my family comes from Basque sheep herding stock, so Flagstaff is are also near and dear, and I know they have a problem. I would like to say I would love to see more investigation into finding different answers. I wish we could clean out some national forest area, but unfortunately we don't have the capability to do that, as that is not in the state's hands. I appreciate the comments very much that were made. They sound very similar to those in my county. And I also want to thank the people who have worked so hard on this bill, because I can guarantee you people are working to find solutions. And perhaps, this is not the answer, but we're going to continue to work together to find something that will work. And it's not going to be 2338, thank goodness. But we're going to continue to work. And one last thing, aside from this panel, I would like to thank Herb Gunther for his input. I consider Herb Gunther the water guru, and before my father passed, he told me, Lisa, if you ever have a question about water, just promise me you'll talk to Herb Gunther, and I always will. So thank you very much for your input, Herb. I respect you deeply, and I'm very happy to see you at every meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate hearing your ideas today, the testimony. I think sometimes it's good to ask the questions, and that's really what we were here to hear from you, the questions. The questions sometimes will tell us more than making statements. It gives us more ideas oftentimes. It's something that we need to do as a state, but we need to do as a region, because each region has their own particular lifestyle, their own particular economy, and we need to protect those economies. It is true, water rights are property rights, and property rights are paramount to America. So we want to do that in a way that protects those kinds of things. 12 to $15 billion industry is our agricultural industry. That's all of it. That's cattle. That's growing crops. That's the lettuce. That's everything. That's serious in Arizona. That's a serious industry. And I'm not here to say that we're going to fallow all this land, because that will destroy the economy to Arizona. That doesn't mean that there will be some places that will decide for themselves, not with the heavy hand of the legislature, to do so and do something else, or do something else with their land. Those are personal decisions to be made. And I have heard many folks out of the Maricopa Valley out there, well, we just need to fallow some land out there. Well, that's not my first statement. I want you to know that. I am in favor of small regional projects, but I am not opposed to a big project for the whole state of Arizona. Let's remember that the CAP is a big Arizona project, and it brought real solutions to Maricopa, Pinal, and Pima counties. 47% of the CAP water is Native American water. So on their settlements, 47% of that water is set aside for Native American settlements. Whether you like it or not, that's the way the federal government has chose to make the decision. That still leaves water down there for the folks in the valley. But for the balance of Arizona, again, I am not opposed to a large project. And when I say a large project, It's probably a large desalination plant. It's not cheap. I believe it would take a broad tax base to put it forward. It's something that we need to look forward to. I don't have any plans for it. I know that the Middle East and those areas in Israel, they have desalination plants that are providing their potable water. And they are using new technology. It's much cheaper to process the water, and they're having very good result with that. Many of the countries over there are online, and the technology continues to grow and continues to move and become less expensive as they move through their projects. So, let's think, 50, 100 years from now. What are we going to have available for our kids and our grandkids and our economy? The economy grows because there are those people who move here with ideas, and small businesses pop up here and there. We need to be able to provide the electricity and the services that will keep the economy moving and growing. So I did hold the bill, and I believed it is because it has problems, and this is evidence that there are problems with it, but we do need to come up with a solution. There's solutions out there, but we have got to share our information and decide what solutions are good for our communities. That doesn't mean everybody's going to be happy, because you know what? You have a budget, we have a state budget, everybody's not happy. But it's still our state budget, and we have to live with it and work through it and manage it. We have to manage the resources, as it's been said. I believe that the forest clearing and tamarack, salt cedars are taking water that we need to have for our economy. Anytime the trees and the tamaracks get more water than we do, we need to come up with some solutions on that and redirect it. But I appreciate being here, and I know that you guys have the solution. And I implore you to work together to help the legislature pave the way so that you can have the solution for you, so that the heavy hand of the other areas do not try to come in and change your solutions. This is important. This is very important, not only for now, but for the balance of the history for Arizona. I thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Barton. Mr. Pratt, would you like to say anything?
I would like to just take this opportunity to thank you all for being here today and recognize that we do listen to you. A number of us have been down here on other occasions. We've met with city officials, and we've been with the Soil Conservation District, viewing everything from control of invasive species to water management and what is going on in the ranching country. So these are ongoing meetings. We do appreciate your input, and we thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Herb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, folks, for coming out and giving us your input on this very sensitive subject. As many of you probably know, the Colorado River, we're entitled to about 2.8 million acre feet of Colorado River supply here in Arizona. Over 1/3 of that is put to beneficial use in Yuma, primarily in agriculture, which supports a multi-billion-dollar industry down there. There is a problem, and all of the Yuma water rights are superior to the CAP water rights, which of course puts a lot of pressure on those rights, because those are the rights that are needed or cherished in order to be able to sustain municipal supplies. But the Colorado River is over-appropriated. Back in 1922, they estimated that the annual flow, the medium flow of the Colorado River was 17 million acre feet a year. Well, it turns out, after looking at tree rings, and mostly down here at the University of Arizona, and adding another 400 to 600 years of record to the water, the climate change, and the historic rainfall, that it's more closer to 12 to 13 million acre feet a year. So we have already over appropriated the Colorado River somewhere between 2 and 4 million acre feet. Now that 2 and 4 million acre feet, Arizona is responsible for 97% of the shortages on the Colorado River. And the reason for that is we used to share it proportionally between California, Nevada, and ourselves, based pro rata, based on the amount of water that was used. But when we went for getting the authority for and the funding for Central Arizona project, we needed votes, and most of those votes were in California. So in exchange for their votes on the Central Arizona project, we assumed their shortage requirement. So we are now responsible for 97%. So we're looking at shortages somewhere between 400,000 and 600,000 acre foot in the near future. And we know where that's going to come from. It's going to come out of Warren's water supply, the CAP, because they have the outstanding low priority. And so they're going to be reduced by from 1.4 or 1.5 million down into the neighborhood of somewhere about 800,000. And being they serve mostly municipal supply, municipal customers, you just can't turn them off. And so they are challenged, as is Perry Benamelis, who's in the audience, with CAP, to find out where that alternative supply is going to come from. So there is a lot of demand that is just beginning to surface. And a lot of that pressure is going to be through the Central Arizona project. As far as new water is concerned, to make up some of that supply, desal is obviously the most logical answer. I mean, 70% of the water in this world is in the ocean. It's not subject to drought, and it's not subject to shortages. It is slightly more expensive and probably can only be used for municipal supply. But it's time that we stop diverting water from the Colorado River, taking it over to the Los Angeles area, when they could easily convert to desal, albeit slightly more expensive. But that cost is coming down as the membrane technology improves. So if we're really looking forward to a sustainable supply, one that's not subject to drought or shortages, we ought to be looking at desalination. And we are doing that. We're trying to coordinate with California. They're very difficult to work with. They think it's their ocean. Imagine that. And anyway, we have trouble trying to get access to it because of their attitude. So we're also working with Mexico, who in some cases are a lot easier to work with, which is hard to believe, but that's the truth. So we're looking at those alternatives. We're looking to the future. And I do believe that eventually we will partake in very significant desalination projects to handle our municipal water supplies. Now, as far as you folks are concerned, now, I mean, we think we have a problem, but you really have a problem down here with your water supply. You're in a tug of war between a Federal Reserve water supply and your needs here in Sierra Vista. And everybody says, well, if you keep pumping the water you're pumping up here, you're going to interrupt the recharge from the Front Range of the Huachuca Mountains, and that's the same water that eventually downslope goes to the San Pedro. Well, we all know that there's multiple factors that affect the flow in the San Pedro River. How much water is coming out of Mexico, how much riparian vegetation is drinking it up. Every tree, of course, is a little pump. And if we expand the riparian areas along the San Pedro, we reduce the amount of water that's immediately available in the surface of the river. And then we have the local recharge. I mean, there's just any number of variables that it can affect the flow. Now, when I was working as DWR, I suggested that we go into an emergency plan, and in case the flow reduced to next to zero and threatened the fish in the riparian habitat, why not put a series of wells just north of the border in Mexico and be prepared to pump water, even though it's just kind of recycling it, that would flow down the river and maintain those populations. I know we have to pay for the power to pump that water, but at least you'd have a backup supply in critical situations. So I don't know where it's going. I do know it's going to be a very litigious issue, and will probably eventually go to the Supreme Court of the United States for a decision on whether or not the Federal Reserve rights are going to trump the groundwater rights here in this area. So I admire you for trying to work through a solution. I just hope that solution doesn't come through the courts, because it's probably going to be one that we can't really live with. So the hydrology is extremely complex. Everybody thinks we know that the water runs downhill, and when we intercept it, it's going to affect the flow of the river. But it's not that simple. It is a very complex issue and needs a lot more study. So I admire your fortitude. Like I said, I don't have a solution, but I admire the problem that you're dealing with, and I wish you well. Just one other point, Mr. Chairman, and that is with regard to the quantity of water in your groundwater basin, it is tremendous. And I was petitioned several times as director to declare this a active management area. And I kept telling him I can't declare it an active management area because there's no threat to the available water, and it's sustainable for the existing population. And we can't, consider any effects it might have on other things, such as riparian vegetation. But as far as the people are concerned, like you said, you got hundreds and hundreds of years of water supply that can be sustained for use in that basin. So again, I wish you well, and we all collectively in the state are going to have to work toward finding a solution so that we can share the resources we have without having to cut each other's throats. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Herb. If you have anything you'd like to say.
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate that nobody threw anything at the messenger today, and
shoes are the preferred thing.
And just that I always think that it's good to have dialogue. I think it's good to understand things. I learned a lot today, and I really appreciate that the legislators are working on this issue, because water is important. I mean, we all know that, and so it'll be important to continue to, as I said before, plan and invest in that. And I think the biggest challenge always is the investing part. It does cost money when we want to come up with solution. When we do finally come up with some solutions, there's going to be it's going to cost, and it's coming up with ways that are where everybody understands that that's an important investment, and it's an investment in today as we protect and keep working on managing our water resources, and more importantly, it becomes an important investment for our children and grandchildren. So thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Is Senator Griffin still here? Or did she, no. When you had people stand up, was that about split 50-50? I just wanted to note it for the record.
90%.
Oh, okay.
90,
I was joking,
90%.
by the way. I just want to echo what everyone up here has said. I want to thank you for coming out today. And also, as we've been looking at this issue, I think we've all come to the conclusion that what we're going to be looking at is somewhat of a stopgap solution, if anything, that can help in basically utilizing a lot of different things, from conservation to perhaps some regional augmentation to other issues. And then in the long term, we simply have to grapple with the fact that we're going to have to actually augment Arizona's water supply. And I know we've talked a lot about it, and I believe that desalination is the future and would provide more than enough water for all of our continued agriculture needs and housing development needs 25 years and greater down the road. But to do that, we need to start now. So I think we're all starting to begin to realize that we have to start working on this now for that purpose, and also on this bill for an interim, short-term result. So anyway, I just want to thank you. I appreciate everything you had to say, and with that, we are adjourned.